You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello, world, and welcome to Tales from Hollywoodland, a veritable feast of movies, television, Broadway, showbiz stories, and even a little bit of news and gossip with Julian Schlossberg, Arthur E. Friedman, and Stephen J. Rubin. Today, we're talking about celebrity diets. And now, here's Steve.
Hey guys, I have to credit Arthur with coming up with this very unique topic of food and celebrities. I think that what do they used to say? There are more stars at MGM than there are in heaven. Well, there are probably more diets than there are stars. So there you go. Arthur, why don't you start us off with this veritable feast?
Well, everybody, I think, in the whole world has special foods that they love. We all love chocolate. We all love ice cream. I had some time at the old Pritikin Center some years ago. I spent a couple of weeks there with friend Buddy Hackett and a friend of his who became friendly with, named Rodney Dangerfield, of all people, in a place trying to lose some weight. In Rodney's case, he had some other problems of booze and weed and all that kind of stuff. And everybody came to eat what you were supposed to eat, the healthy foods, which unfortunately tasted like cardboard and paper. So everybody yearned for their favorite foods. And one night they had a bunch of psychologists come down to meet with various groups at the Pritikin Center, who included a duchess from England, some politicians, Charlie Rangel, as I recall, and all kinds of people in the business, show business or not, what have you. But everybody had these everything. And the big question was, when you want to eat anything you want to eat, what is it that you eat, good, bad, or ugly? And I heard things that were incredible. So that's what this topic really is. We found out through some research about some movie stars and celebrities and things that they love to eat that are interesting, to say the least, as a topic. I'm going to give you an example. Clark Gable's favorite food was toasted rye toast with a big fat Bermuda onion and mustard on top of the onion. Not a normal thing that we eat. So there's just an example. I will say one other thing. Barack Obama, who loved cheeseburgers, every night before he goes to sleep, eats 7 lightly salted almonds. So these are not common kind of things, but that begins the topic, and we can now go from there.
So Arthur, I got to ask you, since you spent some time with Rodney Dangerfield, we all know the public personality of Rodney Dangerfield, one of the funniest men ever. What was he like behind the scenes when you saw him? Was he funny? Was he quiet?
I'm laughing just thinking of it. He wasn't quiet. No, he was a regular guy who happened to, go into his Rodney Dangerfield mode more often than you could think, and started telling stories and twisting his tie, which was not on. He was wearing a running outfit, but he still went up to his neck and dealt with his little tie knot, which just wasn't there. He was funny, serious, and certainly a fairly intelligent guy. But like so many people in the business, he's a very complex guy. Buddy Hackett was there. He had a bit of a drinking problem. We don't think of that. You're going to talk about Bill Holden. I know he had a big drinking problem.
Well, it's funny when you look up a lot of the diets of these actors, one of the things that stands out is they all seem to have drinking problems, major drinking problems. You mentioned Holden. I mean, one of our favorite actors of all time. I mean, in the 1950s, who was bigger than Bill Holden? But he liked certain types of things, and he actually would cook some things up. He had a dessert item that he was very fond of: lime gelatin with carrots, nuts, and olives.
Oh,
I think I want to vomit just
The olives part. The olives
Oh, yeah,
part.
olives. I'm sorry, guys, but I am not a fan of olives. I will never eat an olive. But that's just me. He also liked to make boiled new potatoes with herb laced butter. And his burger was called the Hong Kong burger. I couldn't find out what a Hong Kong burger was, but those were things that Bill Holden ate. We know that he drank prodigious amounts of alcohol, and of course, that was what eventually would kill him.
Julian, what are Woody Allen like, Julian?
Well, Woody had a great quote I always loved when we would go out. He said that he has to avoid all food that gives him pleasure. So I thought that was pretty good. Now he's on a Mediterranean diet. He avoids the food that feels that will. He's got one great thing going. His dad lived to 100 and his mother to 98. So he's got a lot of in that area a great future, I think. But speaking of drinking, we have to remember Humphrey Bogart. Bogart was known as a drinker. Scotch was his favorite thing. And he was one of these creatures of habit. He liked to have the same food over and over again. Most of the time, it was steaks and chops, and he would never have dessert. He would not do that. And of course, that was a pretty tough diet to have when you're drinking and you're smoking as much as he did. And he never made it past 57 years old. So it's not shocking that, but boy, think of that, how much his importance was in the film industry. Here's a man who only lived to 57 and is still known. It's amazing how many stars are not known, who were major stars in the 30s and 40s, but Bogart's one of the few that lives and lives, and as long as I guess they've have things like the Maltese Falcon and Casablanca and Caine Mutiny, some of the great movies he was the star of.
The work lives on, and they live on with it, no question about it. Like nobody knows Rock Hudson today, and
Julian, what was that in the Caine Mutiny? Humphrey Bogart's character, Captain Queeg. He has a what's the thing? Was it cherries? He was
strawberries.
Strawberries.
Who took the strawberries? Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, good, Steve, the way you get that in. That was not part of his diet, though.
That was food, right?
Too healthy.
Well, speaking of cigarettes, we know how many people cigarettes kill every year. Judy Garland, when she was under contract to MGM, was perceived to have a weight issue. So the edict from L.B. Mayer down was that Judy was not allowed to eat, or at least eat anything other, get this, chicken broth, black coffee, and here it is, 80 cigarettes a day. Oh. Unbelievable. I mean,
and look how young she died.
Yeah.
47?
47.
Yeah.
And ironically enough, when she died, I believe she was very thin.
Yeah.
I saw her, guys, in an elevator where I lived at Prudential Center in Boston about 3 weeks before she died. And I got on the elevator late at night, and there was this little lady in the elevator. I didn't pay any attention. But as I got to my floor, which I think the 23rd floor, I thought, is that possibly Judy Garland? I took a look around, and it was. She just looked so awful. Turned out, friends of mine owned the nightclub right across the street, Paul's Mall Jazz Workshop, and she was dating at the time. She was dating one of the bartenders and living in Boston at Prudential Center. But she looked, first of all, she looked like she was 80. But she looked like she was about 40 pounds. And then a couple of weeks later, she passed away. You mentioned
one of the great highlights of my life, Arthur and Steve and Mike, was to see as a little boy Judy Garland at the Palace. Yeah. My dad took me, and it was something that you just could never forget. not because I was 9 years old, so it's not like I knew much about show business. But what I knew was I had never been in an audience that was so electric. I never heard the screams and yells, and people went crazy for her. It was an amazing thing. What a showstopper she was. There aren't that many people you see live. Maybe you can take a couple of handful that where the place rocks. I mean, just goes wild. I'm not talking about,
becomes a sporting event.
that's right.
You
That's
know,
right.
I had a cousin of ours. When I was a kid, was Jackie Miles, who some old timers might remember, but he was a great comic, and he opened for Judy Garland in a lot of places where she toured. And he told my dad, and I was maybe 10 years old listening to this, that in Washington, D.C., as an example, before she went on, they had to push her out on the stage. She had such stage fright that they would literally, her husband, Sid Luft, they would have to get behind her and, Judy, you got to get on. And the moment she went out, it was great. It's a matter of getting her on stage.
I
But
think
she was also had a lot of problems with liquor and drugs and stuff.
I think the Philadelphia Eagles have kind of emulated them because now they
They
have
did, right. They have that play.
they have
You're
the
right.
push.
So I want to get back for a second, Steve, to the diet thing. You just mentioned the Jello, did you? Here's one. Zsa Zsa Gabor, favorite food is green peppers, orange juice, and Jello. Now, Jello is great for the diet because although it's sugar, it's limited. And it's water. It converts to water and you urinate and goodbye, you know? So it seems like Jello I notice, is there in a lot of these people's diets.
Well, you know, I was when you were rattling off the list, I was thinking she also had a predilection for husbands.
Yes.
Yes.
She had group alimony.
And you have to remember that we once on radio we would hear JELLO.
Of course.
And who was that for? You guys remember?
Jack Benny, maybe? No?
That's it. Arthur wins
Yeah.
another prize. It was Jack Benny.
But how about the fact, Julian, that JELLO, Jello, to people like ourselves, was Jello? There were things like Frigidaire. That was a refrigerator. Jello was Jello. They had it so down pat in terms of advertising that we actually thought the product itself was the brand.
Like Kleenex.
Yes.
Scotch tape.
Ivory soap. IVOR, lava, LAVA, lava soap.
Xerox.
Yeah, right. So anyway, let's go a little further with this. How about this? Albert Einstein, not talking Hollywoodland, but nonetheless, we all know who he is. His big love was calf's liver with caviar. And then he became a vegetarian, but he did have bad digestion, although his brain was functioning tremendously well. Henry Kissinger, guys, lived to be 100 years old on his favorite food was bratwurst, hot dogs, and Wiener Schnitzel, and no exercise. Henry Kissinger lived to be 100. And along the lines of food, he was questioned about Richard Nixon when Nixon really went downhill with Watergate. He came out of the White House and the reporters asked him, Mr. Kissinger, what's Nixon like right now? He says, to be honest with you, Richard Nixon is now bananas, meaning he went a little nuts.
And we seem to be able to get any kind of food into this
That's right.
discussion.
Well, then let's move into the White House. Wasn't it Ronald Reagan who was obsessed with Jelly Bellies?
Yes.
Jelly beans.
Jelly beans, also known as Jelly Bellies. That was a brand. Absolutely.
And he was wrong. If you love jelly beans like I did, you find out that the really greatest brand of all time of jelly beans was not Jelly Bellies, the most popular. It's something called Teeny Weenies.
Teeny Weeny.
There you go, folks. Teeny Weeny jelly beans are better.
Well, Kirk Douglas, the magnificent star of Spartacus and so many great Billy Wilder films, including Ace in the Hole, loved meatloaf and mashed potatoes seasoned with nutmeg. You know, I don't know if I could ever find a nutmeg. I've never seen a nutmeg. Are you guys familiar with nutmeg?
In the business, I've met a few.
It's the name of the state of the nickname of the state of Connecticut. The nutmeg state.
A nutmeg state. He also liked his charcuterie board with pickles, onions, and mustard.
Now, I want you guys to think in terms of who was the best cook who was a star. You guys should know that.
Danny Kaye.
Danny Kaye. Danny
Chinese
Kaye
food.
could have you over his house, and he would serve an 8-course Chinese meal. He loved to cook. He was a terrific cook, and those I never had the opportunity nor the invitation, but those that have said it was incredible. He just loved to do it. He did it well. He believed in salt-free food, high protein. He liked the no-fat diet. He was pretty ahead of his time as far as knowing what you can and cannot eat. And boy, he was one hell of a chef, they say.
And Johnny Mathis used to love to cook chocolate chip cookies. He baked them in the oven, and he brought the cookies out to his foursome. A friend of mine was in his foursome at Riviera Golf Club, and his valet brought out the cookies to the guys to chew while they were putting. And he loved those. I want to give you Elvis Presley. I think we all have heard lots of things about
Now, his thing, wasn't it something to do with peanut butter?
It had, well, his part, listen, he liked anything fried. Anything fried. He liked fried potatoes with corned beef hash. And he loved peanut butter sandwiches fried in butter with bacon. Elvis Presley, folks, lived to be how old?
42.
42, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And certainly the diet didn't help.
No, and as a matter of fact, he died from a condition where he really, what ended his life was he couldn't go to the bathroom. And I think, unfortunately, part of his problem was this terrible diet of eating these kind of foods.
Was it some form of constipation, Arthur? What do you think?
Yes.
No, not good.
He died on the toilet.
Yeah, I think that the peanut butter and you mentioned, what was the ingredient you had with his peanut butter?
Peanut butter fried in butter with bacon.
Yeah, I also heard he liked peanut butter and banana sandwiches.
Bananas, yes.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, listen, you are what you eat. Somebody wrote that book. Marilyn Monroe, guys. Would you be surprised to know that one of her really favorite things was hot fudge sundaes? I could just see it now. It's sitting in a bathing suit eating a hot fudge sundae.
By the way, a hot fudge sundae at Will Wright's, which was a very popular ice cream store on Beverly Drive in Beverly Hills. I went there with my parents when I was little. Will Wright's was a legendary ice cream place, and I guess it was down the road from her acting classes.
What happened to Will Wright, Steve?
I think it's.
I don't remember it. I would have found it.
It's been closed probably for 40 years. It's a little bakery now. She also seemed to love warm cereal. She would heat up her milk and pour her cornflakes into it. And
I see too that she loved steak with raw carrots.
Right.
Sometimes with raw eggs mixed with milk.
That was her morning thing.
Yeah.
That kind of reminds me a little bit of Sylvester Stallone's Rocky regimen in the morning, where he'd throw 2 raw eggs into a glass and drink the raw eggs a little bit. I guess it was a pick-me-up.
One of the things that was always interesting to me was to watch some of the actors who were very, very heavy lose weight for a while. I remember Jackie Gleason had 3 wardrobes of small, medium, and large, almost, of suits and clothes, because he'd take it off, he'd put it on. Of course, it's not great for the body to do that way, that kind of thing. But the guy that I knew very well, who ended up dieting and keeping it off the rest of his life, was Joe Bologna. If you see Joe Bologna in the movie Made for Each Other, he's a big, heavy guy. And he said to me, I got to lose weight, and I'm never going to put it on again. And I thought, well, sure. That's what everybody says, including me. I'm never going to put it on again. But he took it off, and he never put it on again.
What did he do? How did he do it?
He just, as he said, I didn't change my diet as much as cut in half what I used to eat. He just cut down more than changing the diet.
Well, Julian, you have a story to tell, and that is that at one time in your life, I get the feeling if they cut you open, you would see a pastrami sandwich. But you got off all of that, and you got straight. Tell us how that happened.
Well, I became friendly with Marlo Thomas and Phil Donahue, and Marlo started becoming dieting on a macrobiotic diet for a while. And so I gave that a try, but I found it was like, as you said earlier, Arthur, eating cardboard. It just wasn't enjoyable. But I started doing research on food and realized that there was certain foods that really were bad for you, and everyone knows it now, but at that time we really were pretty ignorant of it. But I would never say I don't miss pastrami or corned beef, or fried tempura or whatever. There's so much food that I gave up because I just wanted to live as healthy as I could. It wasn't about length, it was about healthy. Because one thing I don't think most of us don't like is pain. And I thought, better take it easy with this kind of food. So I'm not a vegetarian, but I do have poultry. I do have duck and fish, chicken, but I have no meat, no red meat at all.
But when you have a desire and you decide once in a blue moon to have something that is wrong, what is your favorite wrong thing to have?
I think I mentioned to you this, Arthur, on one of our telephone conversations.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, Phil Donahue. We would spend New Year's every year for 30 some odd years with Phil and Marlo, and Phil would fly in on New Year's Day, have flown in from Kansas City, the best kind of steak you could ever eat. And so every January 1st for many, many years, I would look forward. I used to say, there's only 350 days left for my steak.
I have the same.
If you went into, but it's Julian, the steak. Listen. You can make a case for that being healthy. But if you wanted to get down into the gutter and have something really terrible, but you love, that you would have, if somebody said they're going to drop a bomb on you tomorrow, what would you have, Julian?
I'd look for a bomb shelter.
What would you have to eat?
I guess. Well, I certainly would end up with a banana split. I know that because I used to go in the Bronx to a place called Crumbs, Krums, and I know Arthur knows of this. And you could go and they would take a whole banana, cut it in half, 3 scoops of any kind of ice cream you wanted, nuts, cherry, whipped cream, chocolate, hot syrup. Oh, my God. So that would be the dessert. Now, as far as the meal is concerned, well, got to be hash brown potatoes and French fries with a sirloin steak. And I guess I'd start out with a big fat shrimp and lobster cocktail. And then I wouldn't, then the bomb wouldn't even bother me at that point.
Right. I have a friend of mine who was asked a question, and here's a guy who lost 100 pounds. And sometimes I would see him and we would have dinner, and his dinner was a plate of peas. I mean, peas, and he eats 2 at a time like it was a lot. Unbelievable. So I said to him, Phil, what happens if an atomic bomb's going to drop and you knew it at 24? What would you do? He said, you'd see me on my knees in any bakery trying to find just the middles of Danish. So these are the crazy fetishes that we have in food. There was a guy at the Pritikin Center. Oh, God, it was fun. We laughed so hard. Buddy Hackett, Rodney Dangerfield, myself, an actor named Alan Rich, and a producer named Joe Cates. And there was this Duchess who was chocolate. She would dream of all kinds of everybody had the hot dogs and what have you. And they asked Joe Cates, Joe, what would your thing be? And he said, all I can say is, when I die, sell cream cheese short.
Well, what about you, Arthur and Steve? You guys, and Mike too. Let's hear what your diet would be.
Let's hear Mike first. I'm interested.
Go ahead, Mike.
Sure, guys.
The bomb is about to be dropped, Mike. So what are you having for your last meal?
Oh,
and it's not this show, Mike.
The atomic bomb diet.
The atomic bomb diet. I would probably go back in time to probably like Celebrity Deli or something like that, and get a corned beef and pastrami sandwich on rye, and with a something from the pickle bar, and the big steak fries, and probably on the side I probably would do a shrimp cocktail, and then for dessert a banana split, of course.
Steve?
Well, like Julian, I have a New Year's meat thing every year. Elisa goes to Costco and buys their lamb chops. Now, I had been used to restaurant lamb chops, which are very thin, and you eat them and you're still hungry after eating six of them. Costco makes these very thick lamb chops that are like top sirloin, and they are so delicious. They
Ever
are
been to Frankie and Johnny's in New York, close to 8th Avenue? Open grill.
no.
Greatest lamb chops, pork chops, steak. Oh my God.
I lived at Frankie and Johnny's.
There you
I
go.
knew Johnny Phillips.
Were you heavy?
Frankie was dead.
All
And,
right.
and Frankie and Johnny's was during Prohibition was a speakeasy.
Yeah, I
That's
can
why
see
you
that.
had to go up the stairs, Arthur. You may remember. And then
Frankie
that
died from the lamb chops?
Oh, I know. I just had shell. I had shell steak, and
Right.
they took me this. I was such a good customer. They took me to the floor above. I didn't even know there was. I knew there was a staircase, and there hung the beef. It was beef there. Oh my golly! I never had
So
such.
funny.
I never had any steak anywhere in the world better than Frankie and Johnny.
Barb, so funny. I have to say, I'm going to beat you guys in one sense. And here I go. If it were me, I would go back to my childhood, and I remember my favorite foods from childhood, and they would be I would put together a whole buffet of Yankee Doodles. None of this is food. Hostess cupcakes with the glaze, the hard glaze, and the white stripes going through the tops. Hostess anything, and Hostess whatever they are. It's not food. But if you put it in a glass with a little milk, oh my God.
How about Malamars?
Devil Dogs, Malamar cookies, which were marshmallow, chocolate, and Hazarai. They're called Hazarai, which
we had
we'll explain later.
We had a little Jewish bakery down the street when I grew up called the Beverlywood Bakery. It became a legendary place. And they would make these, they had the little butter cookies with the chocolate sprinkles on top. And my mother would go there and get the little pink box, and she'd buy a quarter a pound, so there'd be about 20 cookies in it. And she'd say, Steve, you can have one before dinner. And then she'd come back into the room and the box would be empty. But my dessert choice is either Winchell's Crumb Donuts or Marie Callender's Dutch Apple Pie.
Oh, I love Marie.
That was great.
I discovered it when I was living
that.
out on the West Coast. It is amazing. Especially,
Stevie, did you ever have a Winchell's
especially
claw,
if it's hot.
Winchell's claw?
I haven't had a Winchell's Claw, but one of the things we grew up with in L.A., and this is long before you came out, Arthur, is we used to have the Helms Bakery trucks. A little truck, a little toot truck would come to your neighborhood like the ice cream trucks, and you'd hear the sound, and you'd go out to the truck, and in these beautiful wooden drawers were acres and acres of donuts. And to this day, a million years later, I still remember the texture of their chocolate donuts. It was unbelievable.
But we have to get back to Arthur's diet. Now, come on. Besides the Hostess cakes and the Malamars and the Yankee Doodles, let's talk about a meal. Not just...
I would have, sure. Hot dogs. Everybody knows Nathan's Hot Dogs. Julian and I know of a couple of places in New York that were probably better. The hot dogs at Grant's Hot Dogs on 42nd Street in Times Square, it was said that these things, I can tell you, when you take a bite, it would snap at you. Remember?
It would spritz you.
It would spritz you. You take a bite, and it would hit you in the nose.
Yeah.
But they were delicious. And there was a place also in the Bronx, remember, Julian, called Gorman's?
Yes.
Gorman's Hot Dogs?
Yeah. Yep. And there was Isaac Gellis. Remember?
Maybe Isaac Gellis, but hot dogs are, look, if I go to the ballpark, it's Pavlov, you immediately think of hot dogs. Love hot dogs, love all the delicatessen stuff. without question. But we frequently went to the Palm Restaurant in LA on Santa Monica Boulevard, and everybody had steak. I found the sleeper on the menu, and it was veal parmesan. They made the greatest veal parmesan, more so than Italian restaurants, and Dantana's next door, which was famous for everything Italian, happened to make the greatest steak in town. Strange as it may seem.
Yeah. And they, as you say, they were literally next door to one another.
Yes.
When
you're at a gathering, as I was in Pritikin, where you've got like 100 people, celebrities, lawyers, doctors, whatever, you see the strange, you're eating, they teach you to eat the good stuff, vegetables, fresh fruit, lean protein, whole grains. But everyone who's there is there because we all love the stuff we are talking about now. I don't think anybody ever escapes it. If you're on like Julian, who's on an exceptionally good diet now, at one time he was into the so-called bad stuff.
Oh, was I ever?
Yeah, nobody grows up as a kid without loving ice cream or, God knows I love ice cream.
Arthur, just ask my dentist. Just ask my
dentist. Right.
I had to go into my dentist one day because I lived on all those childhood sugar foods. 10 cavities in one day to be filled. 10.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah.
4 shots of Novocaine. I was in the chair half the day. But those were the days when we had little tubes of sugar. It was called Licamade. And you'd pour the sugar right into your mouth. Every sugar thing you could eat. I mean, there are cereals in those days. Sugar frosted.
No, Steve, still.
Oh, yeah. No, of course.
The most popular cereals is sugar.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Honey Nut Cheerios, they say it's very good for your heart. It's very bad for everything else, though.
Right. I'll give you one going back to celebrities. I had the pleasure of working with Robert Redford on a couple of his movies. I was his distribution marketing consultant. Got to know Bob pretty good. Great guy. There were 2 guys. There's Robert Redford and then there's Bob. And the key to his eating, he told me, I asked him, how do you do this? I was at a craft service table waiting for him to finish a scene. He was doing, the movie with Demi Moore, and he's the husband, and he wants he sleeps with her for $1 million. Guys, the name of the movie, please. Whatever.
Something about Proposition Night.
Yeah, it was a big hit.
Yes.
About 1993. Oh, yeah. So I'm at the craft service table, and there's the good, the bad, and the ugly at every craft service table.
It was an indecent proposal.
And then there's Winchell's Donuts. And I'm about to reach for a Winchell donut, and his scene was over. They were in a car scene with him, Seymour Cassell, and
by the way, the title, Indecent Proposal.
Indecent Proposal. Very good
That's
movie.
what I just said.
Very, very successful.
Sorry, Mike, didn't hear you.
So I asked him, I said, so he grabbed my arm as I was reaching for the bear claw. Don't do that. Don't do that. So anyway, in the course of that, we had conversation. I said, Bob, how do you do it? How do you stay in shape? And he said, well, it's all discipline. And his method for the listeners was as follows. He told me he loved chocolate chip cookies, he loved red wine, and he loved cigarettes. And so every night he would have 2 chocolate chip cookies, which to me is impossible. He'd have 2 glasses of red wine and 2 cigarettes. His idea being that if he could do that, which he did do, he could always have it the next day and never go through not having what he wanted. But he had the discipline to always have it in 2s. Now, I don't know who can possibly do that. I couldn't eat 2 chocolate chip cookies if my life depended on it.
Well, that became an advertising campaign for Lay's potato chips. The whole thing, you just can't eat just one.
Couldn't eat one.
And who was the spokesman?
Who was the spokesman for Lay's
potato chips?
Was Bert Lahr.
Absolutely
right.
Bert Lahr, the Cowardly Lion. Wow.
Yes.
And look at being in the theater business, the whole idea of eating food in the theater is hand to mouth, repetitious. Hello, popcorn.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, candies, Raisinets, Goobers, Juicy Fruits.
Kind of an interesting tributary off of Redford's diet that he told you about was I got to know Sid Caesar. And Sid Caesar was another example of somebody who was very heavy, and then he'd lose weight and he'd get the weight back. But his concept was simply when you went out for dinner, he wanted dessert. But if he said, I'll have an apple pie, and apple pie would come and he says, 2 bites. That's it. He would take the 2 bites and push it away. He wanted the dessert, but he would not go beyond the 2 bites.
Yeah.
That's
Of course,
called.
I jumped in. I jumped in and took the rest of the apple pie.
I have a friend of mine, dear friend of mine, Sonny Page, whenever we have dinner and I order dessert, and he's thin and he's now closing in on 90 and he's in great shape. But he'll take a bite of whatever I have for dessert, 1 bite, and then push it away as if it's an enemy. It's not a matter of taking the bite and being done. It's taking the bite and pushing it away.
Yes.
So, people have different habits with food, but we all eat. People say you can stop smoking, but you can't stop eating.
Let's talk about the Marx Brothers. Obviously, iconic comedy team of all time. Groucho, not surprisingly, had his own recipe for matzo ball soup. And it was very popular in the Groucho Marx family. I think Groucho's real name was
Julius.
Julius Marx, exactly. Thank you.
Was it Marx?
Yes.
Yes.
Marx.
Was Marx, huh?
Marx.
Okay.
He also had a recipe for date and pecan pie. I guess that was a popular dessert item for him. His brother Chico, who I used to call Chico until I learned it is pronounced Chico. Macaroni alla Lido. That was his specialty. I think it might have come from Venice. And then Harpo liked a mixed cabbage roast. Okay, Harpo.
Harpo was named Arthur, and Chico was Leonard.
Leonard, the Marx brothers. And then they had a 4th brother, Zeppo.
I had a 5th brother, Gummo.
Gummo, right, the Gummo. They were not performing together. Now let's talk a little bit about the Duke, John Wayne. What do you think his favorite food was, Julian?
Oh, it certainly had to be a manly
Mexican?
meal.
No, steak,
Yeah.
chicken,
Of course,
pork.
it's a steak and potato man.
But his and he liked deep dish apple pie, homemade chili. But one of his favorite dessert items, which actually is emulated by someone else I wrote about, Tootsie Rolls. John Wayne loved Tootsie Rolls. I'm looking at.
I'm a candy freak, and I never. That's the only candy I never liked.
You know what? I agree.
Well, you know who also
I loved candies. I loved all candies, chocolate, but Tootsie Rolls too sticky.
You know who also liked Tootsie Rolls? Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. Also like Luden cough drops before he sang.
Yes, and a lot of Italian food. Not surprising for Frank.
You know when Tootsie Rolls became famous?
And Dean Martin too.
Right.
Tootsie Rolls.
What did you say, Arthur?
Tootsie Rolls became famous in World War II. Easy to ship. Nothing could destroy them. And you could just chew on them, and keep chewing. Sinatra, I got Sinatra down for veal Milanese with stuffed artichokes. Ouch. He loved lemon ricotta torte. He loved ice cream. We all love ice cream. Anybody here doesn't love ice cream?
I loved Breyer's chocolate marshmallow. Would wipe me out. I would have quarts of it when I was on the bad side of life.
Some years ago, we made a vacation, my wife, my son, and the little son and I, and we went up to Stowe, Vermont in the summertime. Gorgeous area, on Trapp family. And driving up, I was on one of my 2,000 diets, and I saw a big sign off the road, off the turnpike. I said, another 2 miles, Ben and Jerry's factory. And I said, gee, I think this should be interesting. So we went there. They give you a tour. And I went in to take the tour. And they, of course, give you tastes of it, whatever you want. And I saw how they made, as an example, Heath Bar Crunch ice cream as a metaphor for any kind of filling, like chocolate chip cookies or the Snickers, whatever the hell they made. This is the way they made it, guys. There's these huge vats where they make the ice cream. It's really clean. Everybody's got white outfits on. And they take, as an example, Heath Bar Crunch, they take full boxes of it, like there may be a dozen candies in a box. They're just stuff you'd buy in a candy store. And some guy stands, puts it up above his head, throws it on the marble floor, and it crashes. Then they open up the paper things and they throw these ingredients into the vats. And that's why you get such big chunks out of it. Well,
Pretty
I
wonderful
tell you,
going in there.
oh God, no one could possibly withstand having taste of that. What would you like? Would you like some cherry vanilla? Watch this. And they put in there thousands of cherries, all fresh stuff. But that'll take you off of the diet, as it took me off of that particular diet. But I've never met a person that didn't like ice cream. I've never met such a person.
Natalie Wood,
Yep.
who was a very popular actress, died tragically, had nothing to do with the food, though. She loved to cook huevos rancheros,
Oh,
which is a very popular dish for the mornings. Eggs,
yeah.
tortillas, ranchero sauce, which a ranchero sauce is tomato-based with chili peppers and herbs. That was her specialty. Jimmy Stewart loved pork chops supreme and fried chicken imperial. That was his go-to. And then Russell Crowe, our more contemporary actor, who of course shined in Gladiator and so many other good movies. He's a little more down to earth. He likes local yogurt and fruit and eggs and croissants and baguettes. Obviously, big into carbs. He also likes.
Have you taken a look at Russell Crowe lately?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
he's been eating more of the carbs, I think.
I don't think he's off. I don't know what he's eating, but it certainly isn't slender.
Well, he likes Tim Tams, and apparently Tim Tams is an Australian chocolate biscuit. And he's probably been getting into his Tim Tam locker a little too much lately, because he does balloon.
He does.
You guys
are amazing.
You all agree that the
great
best
snacks.
chili we've ever had is at a place called Chasen's?
They exported that all over the world.
Great chili. My brother oversaw a part of the production of Heaven's Gate for United Artists, and he flew up there to Kalispell, and the first thing he saw were crates and crates of chili from Chasen's, which was only part of the budget that basically broke United Artists.
Yeah.
Chasen's. So anyway, there was that. Would anybody be surprised to know that Richard Nixon's favorite food was cottage cheese and sliced pineapples and milk? Ooh, try that one.
It's actually become a popular item, because you can go to any market now, and in that section they have cottage cheese with pineapple slices. That's popular.
Yes, it became popular, but Nixon was never fat.
No. He was fat-headed, but he wasn't fat.
Let us make one thing perfectly clear.
Yeah, right. Julia Roberts is a cookie freak. She loves cookies of all kinds.
Well, I can certainly understand that. Robert Mitchum made his own border hash. He also liked chili, of course, like you just said. His was called Mitchum's Chili Wonder. He would cook it for the whole crew when he was out on location. But he did something interesting with his chili. He added chocolate to it.
Ooh.
Chocolate in your chili seems a bit odd.
Ooh. Can you imagine Robert Mitchum was arrested in 1948 for smoking marijuana and put in jail?
Yeah.
Robert Mitchum went to a costume ball naked with ketchup on his head as a hamburger.
Ah.
How naked was he, Julian?
He had nothing on.
He also had a hot dog there too, right?
Paul Newman loved salads. He was declared a salad nut. And of course, we all know that he created his homemade salad dressing, which of course became the beginnings of one of the largest food companies, or at least condiment companies ever. His salad was called Newman's Own. You can buy it in your local store. Julian, have you ever had?
Oh, yes, very much so. I did. And he did a lot of great charitable things with the Hole in the Wall gang and taking care of lots of kids. He he was a quite a good guy. And
How
that
would we
that
rate?
ended.
We know that Paul Newman was a huge movie star. He was on a top list of. If you had to make movie stars of a lifetime, he would be one of the on the top. Was he that great an actor, Julian? What do you think?
I thought he was a terrific actor. Terrific.
All
Yeah,
you
I
need to
think,
say, Arthur, is The Hustler.
and
yeah.
I would
Wow.
say the movie HUD. He
Oh,
was
yeah.
so good in HUD, and he played against Patricia Neal, who was extraordinary in that movie. Yes, he was very good.
Anybody ever see him in the movie he hated and he should have hated it called is The Silver Chalice?
It was the only time he ever wore a toga. He did. Paul
He
Newman was.
hated that movie.
He was one of those actors who should never have worn costumes. I think the West was about as far back as he should have gone. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I saw him on Broadway in Sweet Bird of Youth that
Oh,
Kazan directed, and Geraldine Page starred in with him. But he did, at the end of his career, he did Our Town, and he played the lead, a man who takes you through the whole story. He was superb. Yes, Arthur, I think he was a terrific actor.
Yeah, and I agree with you, by the way. Was Steve McQueen a great actor?
Not for me, no.
Steve?
my all-time favorite actor.
Actor or movie star?
Definitely a movie star. Not a very likable person because of his upbringing. He just did not like people, but he loved kids. I've told the story 9,000 times. He once asked me for directions while I was riding my Schwinn, and I'll never forget. I turned my head, and there's a guy in a Ferrari, Steve McQueen. When he was at the top of his game, I don't think there was ever a movie star like him in the late 60s, early 60s. The Magnificent Seven, the
Do you
greatest.
have his favorite foods?
According to what I found, he liked Mexican food and cold beer. He was a basic guy: steaks, burgers, fries, chili, nothing fancy, not surprising. He certainly liked to drink and smoke marijuana. The unfortunate image of him after the towering inferno for the last 7 years of his life, basically sitting in his hot tub in Malibu, just drinking and getting bigger and bigger. I think, Arthur, you told me you bumped into him at the Beverly Wilshire.
He was, yeah, he was
He
in
was
he was in a
huge.
lounge taking the sun, and he was big and fat, hardly recognizable. He had a beard.
And I'm just going to say, I saw him because I always stayed at the Beverly Wilshire, and he had a gigantic beard, and he had gained a lot of weight. No, I
Yeah.
don't think he was a great actor, but boy, oh wow, he was a terrific movie star.
Oh yeah.
One of the top movie stars
The one movie
ever.
that he gets plaudits for in terms of acting and received his only Academy Award nomination was The Sand Pebbles. He's
Yes.
very good in that
Yeah.
movie. And unfortunately, it was the same year that Paul Scofield did A Man for All Seasons, which got all the awards. But
Well, yeah.
he was very good.
But McQueen loathed dialogue. He always stories of his son Chad, seeing him at home with a script, just with a red pencil, crossing out lines wherever he possibly could. If you see stuff like Bullet or even the Thomas Crown Affair, there's very limited dialogue.
He did not. He was very self-conscious about talking, and I think that wherever he could cut lines, he could. Perfect example is the Magnificent Seven. He probably has a dozen lines in the whole movie, but they're very good lines. They're very good pointing to him.
But all those guys, if you remember those guys like McQueen, Redford, Paul Newman, I'm talking 60s, 70s mostly, they're all thin. None of them are fat, Now, maybe they became fat later. Redford never became fat, but they were all ate limited. Paul Newman was a smoker. I know that. McQueen smoked cigarettes.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
they were smart. They were smart enough to know that if they gained weight, they could lose their career.
Yes.
It's sad
they-
that all of the fat actors all died young. Well, Fatty Arbuckle was probably extreme. I mean, you've got
Well,
I'm thinking of the guy
let's
from
Sidney Greenstreet. I mean,
Sidney
certainly.
Greenstreet.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Tom Hanks.
Orson Welles lived reasonably long.
Yes.
But he wasn't too bad.
He was
So-
immense. I saw Orson Welles. I'm coming out of the lobby of the Copley Plaza Hotel in Boston one afternoon, and there he is with a cape. He was probably at his heaviest. he looked great. He had this beard, but it was Orson Welles. Man, was he heavy. I will say that my partners really discovered a comic named John Panette. John was 400 pounds, and John was funny. And as I've mentioned on this program before, if you doubt it, check him out on YouTube. But he was as funny as anybody that ever lived. I mean, John was hysterical. Not because he was fat, although his whole routine was based on food and stuff. But I became a partner with my partners on John, and we managed him in the early parts of his career. And so we moved him out to LA. He didn't drive. He was hysterically funny in stand-up nightclubs. And he moved into the Oakwood Apartments by Warner Brothers, if you guys know where that is. And so because I was out in LA frequently, I was the guy of the three partners. I would see John up close and personal all the time, make sure he was okay. What was he doing? John was a very intelligent guy, read books, loved series of mystery books. And I'd frequently go over there and say, John, let's go. Come on, I'll take you out to lunch. And we went to the smokehouse. We went to Patty's. I'll never forget going to Patty's. And his key dish was, the waitress said, what would you have? And he said, I'd like some mashed potatoes and gravy. And she said, okay, what would you like, a steak with it? Or no, just mashed potatoes and gravy. And he ate all these mashed potatoes and gravy. And for dessert, she said, would you like apple pie or peach pie? They had great cakes and pies and Patties on Toluca Lake. And he said, I'll have an apple pie. So she brings him a slice of apple pie. And he says, no, I want the whole apple pie. Now, an apple pie story I will tell briefly. A diner in New Haven, Connecticut, near a Holiday Inn. I went in one time. Guys, would you like dessert? Yeah, I'd have the apple pie and ice cream would be great. I love apple pie and ice cream. He said, would you like the regular apple pie or the French apple pie? And I said, what's French apple pie? And he said, I'm glad you asked. It's on the house. You're the first time here. He brings out French apple pie. Do you guys know what that is?
Oh, yeah. It's very crummy. It says
glaze on top,
yep.
Raisins and cinnamon in the middle. And I'm telling you, with French apple pie a la mode, I quelled. We understand what quelled me. I sat there quelling and eating at the same time. And the guy said, you're enjoying it so much, it's on the house. Come back again.
I just looked up Laurence Olivier. Certainly talk about the great actors of all time. By the way, I just watched his Hamlet for the first time. I'd never seen Lawrence's Hamlet. Best Picture of 1948, Best Actor of 1948. He loved kippers. Now, somebody has to explain to me what is a kipper.
It's something fish. It's smoked fish, I think.
It is smoked fish.
Didn't they say get one for the kipper?
No, yeah.
Oh, that's
like kippers, scrambled eggs, and porridge.
Okay, back to what Arthur said about John and this heaviness. Think of all the heavy guys who are comics. You got Jackie Gleason, you got Jackie Leonard, you got Sam Levinson, you got
Chris Farley,
Don
Belushi,
Rodney Dangerfield,
John Candy.
Talking about him. So, Candy. A lot of these fellows were really heavy. And not like your guy, John, Arthur John, that 400-pounder, but big guys.
John took off 100 pounds. We sent him to the Pritzker Center. He lost 25 pounds in 2 weeks. And we went out to an Italian restaurant and he put on 12.
My writing partner, Billy, said he was walking into a club one day because he was also stand-up. He said he was trying to convince John to lose some weight. And John Panette actually told him, he said, Billy, if I lose weight, I won't be funny.
No, we had a meeting with a shrink to see if he could help. And the shrink said that if he loses too much weight, he may lose being funny. But that wasn't the thing with John. It wasn't, he lost 100 pounds. He was still funny. He was funny. He had the funny. And look, he was never going to get down to 175 pounds. It was never going to happen. But he was very funny at 250. He went from 400 to 250, 260. And he dressed up. He looked nice. And he actually was a good-looking guy. But he really was funny. I defy anybody to watch this guy and tell me that he's not as funny as anybody ever was. Audience.
And they should also know that he was in the very last Seinfeld.
Yes,
Seinfeld's last episode.
last
He is
episode.
there, and he's the reason that they all get picked up and put in jail.
Billy told me that I should watch a YouTube of John ordering a Chinese meal.
Of course, yeah, one of his original routines. We saw it all. I mean, we saw John when he was nobody, and I'm telling you, the audience in Nick's in Boston, which my friends owned, could not stop laughing. He
say his last name again, Arthur, so people can look it up. Say his last name again.
John Pinette, Pinettee. Yes, if you discover him, you will never ever forget it. He did a thing early on at 400 pounds where he said he was put on a liquid diet for a week, and there was a knock on his door, and it was a Girl Scout selling cookies. And he said to the Girl Scout, "I think you're going to win the trip to Washington this year. Bring your friends." He had, oh boy, John was funny. Don Rickles, who saw him, called me over to his booth and said, "This kid's really funny, really funny. Can you get him to lose weight?" Well, it wasn't for us to get him to lose. It was tough. It was just a tough thing. He was that way since he was a child, but he had the funny. And if you have it, I maintain every comedian will tell you, you are either funny or you are not funny. And if you have it, I don't care what the hell you look like, you are funny. And there's a lot of people that way who are not celebrities, by the way. I think we know some who could be insurance salesmen, bartenders, doctors. They have the funny. Elaine May, in her own way, I mean, she clearly has the funny. She writes it, as Julian knows better than anybody. And Mike Nichols, in a different way than we've ever seen comedians who are funny. I mean, I've watched some of their stuff, and it's hysterical.
The weight helped Jackie Gleason in The Hustler. I don't think it would have been as effective if his name was Minnesota Slim.
No. But you know what Jackie Gleason was the greatest at? He was the greatest at facial expressions. Mugging. His facial expressions were unbelievable.
And who else was fantastic? The great Jack Benny. Just by looking at, say one word like "well," or just look at someone with a look. Incredible talent. Nothing like that today.
Gentlemen, we've come to the end of our wonderful show. I'm actually kind of hungry right now.
I'm starving.
Michael Faber, our host, our producer, our totem on our totem pole. Go for it.
Ooh, a totem. Wow.
Wow.
Well, damn it. I'm going to go get some food so you guys could just do the closing yourselves. You've reached the end of this episode of Tales from Hollywoodland podcast. Always remember, we couldn't do this without you. We want to hear from you, so please write us anytime at talesfromhollywoodland@gmail.com. Remember, you could also find us wherever fine podcasts are found. And now you could even find us up on YouTube. If you made it this far into the episode, why not subscribe and give us a thumbs up? Or if you're listening to us, please give us 5 stars. If you're into social media, please check us out on Instagram and Facebook. We would really appreciate it. Before we get out of here, let's check with the guys and see what's going on their shows this week. Julian, who are you talking to this week?
This week is the Emmy Award-winning actress Holland Taylor, who won that for playing a wildly controversial judge on The Practice. And most people know her also for 2.5 Men as the imperious mother of Charlie Sheen and John Cryer. Holland was my guest. She's been around for a good 5 decades.
And a very sexy lady at her age, at any age.
True.
Steve, what's cooking over on Saturday night at the movies? You starting back up?
We're back up. The fires are out for the moment, although we're on watch. I'm back to doing my podcast, Saturday Night at the Movies. This Monday is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and I have Judd Newborn talking about Hollywood and the Holocaust, how the Holocaust has appeared in films and television. And that is our next show.
Oh, wow. That's going to be interesting to hear. Arthur, what's coming up next week on our show?
Next week, we're going to have a great show with a friend named Bobby Ochs, O-C-H-S, who was the restaurateur who partnered with movie stars. He had very successful restaurants, partnering with Patrick Swayze, with Ashford and Simpson, the great songwriters, with Britney Spears. We have a great show coming up with Bobby. And one last thing, guys, on food. The most popular food in America, folks, is pizza pie. Go from there. Just know that is the most popular food in the United States of America.
All different styles too, depending on where you live. So it's always interesting to see what
I ever ate was in Italy. Made sense.
Oh yeah,
it was thin, guys, thin.
How thin was it? No. On behalf of Steve, Arthur, and Julian, thanks again for listening. This is your producer and announcer, very hungry person, Mike Faber. We'll see you next time here on Tales from Hollywoodland. Your Hollywood adventure starts right here.
Enterprise-Plaining is a podcast where we talk about Star Trek Enterprise. We are Trek experts.
You're aware that none of us have watched Enterprise before, right? We have whatever is the opposite of knowledge.
Oh, and it's not a normal rewatch podcast. Each week, only one of us watches the episode, and then we explain it to the others who haven't seen it.
That means you don't actually have to watch the episodes we're talking about because we'll explain it all for you.
Oh yeah, we would never actually make anyone watch Enterprise.
Enterprise-Plaining, the podcast where we explain Star Trek Enterprise to each other and to you.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.